Hey everyone, Johnny here. In this episode of Back to Basics, we're going to be covering the array modifier. This modifier lets us duplicate our objects in a bunch of different ways. So let's get into it. To get going, we're going to add an array modifier to our default cube. The first options to take a look at in the array modifier are the fit type and its accompanying value, which will change depending on the type you choose. The first type is fixed count. This allows you to choose a specific count of repetitions for your object. The next type is fit length. This will fit as many repetitions that will fit within the given length. And finally, there's fit curve. To use fit curve, we need to add a curve to our scene, and then choose it with the object picker. The modifier will determine the length of the curve and then use that length in the same way that the fit length option works. One common misconception is that the fit curve option will bend the array to move along the curve. However, this isn't true. It will just use the overall length of the curve to determine how many repetitions to make. If you want your array to follow the curve as well, you would need to add a curve modifier pointing to the same curve. For now, I'm going to return to the fixed count and set my count to 4. The next set of options are the offset options. The first of these is relative offset. This uses the bounding box of the object in each direction and then multiplies that size by the factor selected. When the factor is 1 along any of the axes, the next object will be duplicated directly adjacent to the previous. If it is less than 1, the objects will overlap. And if it's more than 1, there will be a gap between each object. As you can see here, this works in the X direction, the Y direction, and the Z direction. The next offset option is constant offset. Rather than using the size of the bounding box, the arrayed objects are spread out by an exact distance. So in this instance, each object is exactly 1,000 millimeters apart. But no matter how I change the bounding box, that distance will stay the same. The object offset uses the position and rotation of a second object to determine the array offset. One example is creating an empty at the same location as your arrayed object. Then, set the object offset to point to the empty. Now, as you move and rotate the empty, your arrayed objects will follow the same transform. One very helpful use of the object offset is for making circular arrays. For instance, if I wanted this object arrayed in a circle, I could move the vertices away from the origin and then use my object offset to spin them around. Say I wanted to place 7 of these objects around this center, I could increase the count to 7, and then this spin is around the y-axis, so I could set the y rotation of my empty to 360 divided by 7. Now, while you can use the relative, constant, and object offsets individually, you can also combine them to get other types of effects. Take this example for instance. Say I wanted to make this array of blocks into something like a spiral staircase. I could use the object offset to get the circular array, but then I could use a relative offset to get the height. The merge option sets a distance where the vertices between copies will join into one, making them a solid object. Let's take a look again at this staircase. If I add in another loop cut here, and another one here, I can now take these vertices, bring them over, and when they get into proximity of the next copy, they merge into one. If your first and last objects loop all the way around and connect with each other, and you want those vertices to merge as well, You'll also have to enable the first and last copies option. By default, UV coordinates are copied exactly from copy to copy in your array. In the UV section of the array modifier, you can shift the UVs by a value. Taking the staircase for example again, if I offset the U by 0.25, you'll see that the texture is shifted to the left 1/4 of the way across the texture for each stair. So on the first stair, the blue square starts right at the edge. The next, 25% of the way in, the next 50% of the way in, the next at 75% of the way in, and then back to the original. Setting it to negative 0.25, you see it goes in the opposite direction. Changing the V offset will change the vertical offset of our UV map. Finally, there are the cap start and cap end options. This option adds an initial or final object specified by the object pickers to your array. In this case, I've built 3 objects, and I've added an array modifier to this cylinder. I'll use this cap start as this piece, and the cap end as this piece. Setting the relative offset with Z of 1, increasing the count increases the count of the middle objects while leaving the cap start and cap end where they're at. I hope you found this rundown of the array modifier helpful, and I hope it inspires you to make something awesome. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel for updates on future videos, and I'll catch you next time.